Good afternoon, and thank you for being here to help observe Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Our distinguished guest is none other than Solomon Seay Jr., the civil rights lawyer, and he is the author of a brand new book. It's Jim Crow and Me, Stories from My Life as a Civil Rights Lawyer. It's written with Dolores Boyd and published by New South Books of Montgomery and Louisville, Kentucky. Mr. Seay, welcome to the studio.
Thank you for having me.
To many people, the civil rights era was about equalizing opportunity for all Americans, whether racial, ethnic minorities, people with disabilities, or gender. What are your proudest achievements to achieving that dream that Martin Luther King Jr. articulated?
It's difficult for me to single out a particular incident and label it as being my proudest achievement. There are, of course, several things that stand out for different reasons. One of my proudest moments, for example, was when I first met Dr. Martin Luther King, which was at my commencement exercise in Howard University, where he delivered the commencement address and had some very kind things to say about me, but only because I was from Montgomery and he was from Montgomery. One of my other proudest moments came from the fact that I was on occasion a member of the legal team which handled various legal matters for Dr. Martin Luther King, including the trial that was held here in Montgomery for alleged tax evasion. I single those out as proud moments in my life, but it's difficult for me to assess any one episode or any one factor as being one of the proudest.
Just so the listeners will get an example of your achievements, your co-writer, Judge Boyd, said in her introduction to Jim Crow and Me that, quote, no lawyer in the state of Alabama devoted more time continuously to the cause of dismantling segregation in public schools. You stayed in the enforcement arena till 1998, and you were involved in more than 100 court cases that aimed to desegregate schools in Alabama. I'm thinking, where did you get that kind of stamina?
Well, I came into Montgomery and into the practice with that kind of stamina. You recall that I had been a fairly decent boxer. I got in with Kid Franklin as soon as I got here because he had a boxing club and he had several tremendous fighters. And so I stayed in relatively good physical condition for a pretty good while. And it was largely due to the physical condition and the kind of state of mind that I always tried to maintain that kept me going through most of the most troubling times.
Talking about your state of mind, there was a pivotal incident in your young life as an 8-year-old child. And it seemed in reading about this in your book, Jim Crow and Me, that it almost started that, quote, fire in your belly that we hear newscasters talk about.
Well, it did. First of all, my dad was an AME Zion minister, and he was at one time a general officer in the AME Zion Church. And being the child of a minister, I had those Jonah sermons more times than I even care to remember. And as a youngster, I would visualize this bald-headed, bearded man sitting on a homemade stool in the belly of this whale with a cane pole trying to catch some fish that he would cook on the driftwood fire. And finally, after 3 or 4 days, the whale had had enough smoke in his belly that he coughed up Jonah. Now, at that time of my life, there were what we used to call street corner carnivals that would travel around from city to city, and they'd set up on a street, a vacant street, or on an airport, and they would have maybe 2 or 3 little games, a couple of animals maybe, and we were living in Greensboro, North Carolina at the time, and that was advertised that there was a street corner carnival coming to town, and they had a whale. And my mind just drifted back to my concept of what Jonah was all about. And my dad promised to take us. And on the night that the street corner carnival was there, we walked about 3 miles from where we lived to where the whale was supposed to be. And when we got there, there was a big tent, and the whale was supposed to be inside this tent. There was a middle-aged white man standing behind a desk taking up money for people to go in to see the whale. It wasn't very much money, but my dad handed him a couple of bills, and he took my dad's change and threw it on top of the desk. And my dad stood there for just a minute or so with his palm out, and he asked the man, "Sir, are you going to give me back my money with the same courtesy that I handed you my money?" And the guy says, "There's your money, boy." And he said, "Yes, sir, but are you going to be as courteous to me as I was to you and put my money in my hand? Do you want your money, boy? There it is." And I remember my dad said, "Well, if you can't be as courteous to me as I was to you, just give me my money back." And so the man reached in the drawer, took the bills out, put them down on the desk and said, "There's your money, boy." He would rather give up a fee for seeing that whale than to put the money in the hands of a black man.
Did he know your father was a minister, a pastor?
Apparently not, because Dad didn't have on pastoral garb, and this was a traveling sort of sideshow. It just happened, I think, because of his color, and that was just the way things were. In any event, my dad picked up his money, and he put his hand on top of my head. I'll never forget it. And he said, "Come on, son, let's go." And we walked 3 miles back home. All the way, I had tears in my eyes because I one, didn't see this whale, and 2, I can't figure out what's wrong with my daddy. You know, what is this all about, you know? And it didn't really grab me until early teens that this was all about demanding respect as a person of color in this country. It began to dawn on me what the significance of that single act of demanding that he be treated with the same respect that he treated the other fellow with.